Hello, this is Gary Marr from Glendale Community College. This screencast is for my CIS133DA Spring Online 2018 class. And in this screencast, we want to talk about the material covered in Unit G, or specifically working with image files on web pages. Up to this point with HTML and maybe to a greater extent CSS, we've been able to do a lot of clever things with text effects, colors, shapes, sizes. With HTML, we've been able to position different blocks of text and information on the page. We've also been able to create things like nav bars. But now we're going to get in that part of the course from here on in to the end of the book, where we start talking about some other file formats or other types of information that can be displayed in a web page, more specifically things like images, video, audio. This chapter covers images. Now, there are basically two kinds of images that are the most popular with digital devices, computers, cell phones, tablets. One of these is a bitmapped image, the other is a vector graphic. Now the difference is bitmapped images consist of a bunch of dots. JPEG, GIF, PNG are all file formats that are bitmapped images. Bitmap images typically work very well with web pages, excuse me, with the exception of when you try to take a very small image and expand it to a very large image. Then you get what's called pixelation, or some of the dots on the image get spread so far apart it causes the image to go blurry. Now, this is in contrast with vector graphics, SVG files, which are very true, or will always be true when you expand and contract them. They will always be proportional. They'll never show that faded or washed out effect. Although these are more sophisticated graphic files, we don't have time to talk about all that in this class, but they're probably a lot less common than what you're going to find out there for GIF, GMP, and JPEGs, or the three file formats that are talked about as bitmaps. Here's some more information about the different formats. There are other formats besides these. BMP was popular for a while. TIFF was popular for a while. Initially, when pictures or images were first stored at a digital device like a PC, a lot of times some of these formats grew out of the platform that they were being run on. Apple had some formats, and the IBM PC, or excuse me, the Microsoft PC operating system had some different formats. Now they've kind of pretty much followed a standard. If you're using JPEG, GIF, or PNG, you're probably good to go. JPEG being the most common, and I still believe that the ping is probably the smallest, or PNG files are the smallest of these files. But again, this technology is always changing, just like HTML is now on version 5 and the CSS is on version 3. These have changed and new ones will probably crop up with time. I would say that like the other chapters we've covered, when it comes to working with images and what they're talking about in this slide, resolution, the best thing to do is experiment. If you're running on multiple browsers, you also want to run on multiple devices. You want to run this on an iPad or a Chromebook or a laptop. Mess with the resolution settings to make sure that your site is still effective. Again, we're talking here about approaching this particular topic of web pages as if you were creating something professional for someone else. Obviously, your customer, or maybe it's your business, you'd want that page to look as professional as possible, because that would also hopefully reflect on the quality of your work than what you're going to provide. Let's see, let's go farther here. The element that's used to display image is the IMG tag. It also has a couple attributes that are very important. A source, SRC, which describes the path to the file that you're going to use, and also an alt tag. Occasionally, although rare now, but back in the old days, some browsers wouldn't display images, and even some devices still this day, images are turned off or they're not displaying images. Maybe it's because of the screen size. So you want to have an alt attribute, which would also explain what that image is a picture of. I believe this also is going to help in some disability areas. For example, for people who are blind, can't see images, the alt text could be perhaps read by the computer, and this person would know what the image was of, because you would have in the alt attribute a text definition of what the image is. You can see this in a minute. We see some of the code. Let's see. Height and weight are not required. That's right, but you can adjust the height and weight with attributes. Here we get some actual HTML. I think what I'll do now, since the display gets kind of small, and again, as I said in other videos, you can always drop over to the actual sample files that are in Canvas and look at these at a larger size, and also that's true of also the PowerPoint slides. Let's see if we can find some image stuff in here. We should have something. Well, I see the figure. Here we go, right here. All right, so here we've got an anchor tag, which is a link, and it's referencing rooms.html, and within that, and then it's going to point to sun within that, a hashtag to a reference of sun, and then we have an image tag. The source for this one would be images/sun.jpg. Quite often, images are set aside in a different subfolder than the HTML and CSS, and obviously, if that happens, you have to be sensitive to the pathing of the location of that file. You've got a width and height designation here so that the image is controlled. It's going to display from 370 to 278. And then also you have an alt attribute, which would explain what this image would be in text. So if the person does not have the ability to see the image because they've got it turned off, or perhaps they have a disability, then this could be read by something else and relayed back to the person who was using the page. It also takes advantage of the figure tag, which would give you a figure definition at the bottom of the picture. And let's see what else. Maybe we should go back to PowerPoint now because I'm getting ahead of myself. I should show you what the actual page looks like too. Over here, I actually have the page running, and as before, we've worked mostly with text, and we've got our nav bar up here and our text down below. Footer. We now have a picture, and obviously in the case of Lakewood Reads Bed and Breakfast, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and maybe it's 1,000 words towards getting a booking for this particular room. All right, back to the PowerPoints. You can set background images. This can be done in CSS. If we go to CSS, we should be able to see some stuff here. Let's go back over here. Let's look at the CSS file. Let's see, it's got a background for the media tag, which is for printing, but we should also see some other stuff up here. Let's see. I'm looking for the background. Well, the background color, we don't want that. Background color. Here's your background image here. Inside the article, which is probably, I guess, this part of the page, we can see this water view, which kind of makes sense. It is Lakeland Reads Bed and Breakfast. We can see that as part of the background and inside the images folder. And these images in this path is also in your sample files. There's the reference to the background image. Okay. Again, I don't know how much we can really talk specifically about each one of these attributes, tags in HTML, because I think really what you want to do now is look at what they have and experiment. Change some values, put a different image in. Your cameras, your cell phones will all typically be able to take JPEG images now. Take a picture, copy it into a folder, bring it over to your HTML, put it in the background. Change the vision of lakes, or that image of lakes in the background, to something different. See how to do that, see what the impact is, see the cause and effect. That is one of the best ways to learn this technology. Okay, that's the statement we just looked at there, the background color and image. It also supports figures and figure text, which would place copy below it. So let's do two things here. I guess we should look for the image or the page first. Okay, and let's see, we've got a link there. I'm not sure if that's the figure definition or not. We'll need to go and look at the HTML. Inside the HTML, we should have a figure caption. Sunroom, yes, that is the actual, that's not a link, apparently it's just a caption. And there's the figure caption tag. Oh, I take that back. No, there's a figure caption tag, so it appears below the picture, but it is not only a word, but also a link to rooms.html, which is another page that's inside this packet, or this folder, I should say. All right, let's see, let's move on here. Okay, there's a figure and a caption. We've done that, we just looked at that. You can also use an image as a link, which means you're going to cross it over with a anchor tag. We looked at this one earlier when I was looking at the image tag in our example code. It was combined with an anchor tag, or the A element, to create a link. There's also something called image maps, and an image map, basically an image that has hotspots. And these hotspots have to have coordinates, and they have to be designated as circles, rectangles, polygons. There are tools available that assist you here. I mean, one of the tough things is to actually know where the coordinates lie. Is you can tell, let's see if we go over here, I'll probably see it better over here. As we go, HTML. As we go over here, let's see. Yeah, that's all right. I guess they moved it. If we come over here, let's see if we can find some tags. Oh, you know what? I think I found. This one actually doesn't have any captions in it. This particular example, I believe it's talking to an example in the book, so I'm not going to find anything there anyways. But what you'll do with this is you'll identify position coordinates, so that when the mouse is over the top of one of these various shapes, you can then activate a link or have something happen, which is dependent on the location in the image on that page. It's a clever effect. I guess you'd have to call it a clever effect. I'm not sure it's that widespread, but it is something you have at your disposal. Fav Icon, I think I skipped a couple. Fav Icon is also something that's available to you. It's been around for a while now. If you develop a graphic that represents that web page, maybe it's a logo or something which you're using to brand your site, you can create a 16 by 16 pixel image, save it in a .ico file, specify that in your HTML so that when, you can't see it here probably too well, but when that page comes up, you'll see a small icon next to the name of the page. I think that if I shrink this down a little bit here, you can see up here, there's my reads, just like this logo is on the page. It's also appearing in the tab portion of the HTML page. That's a Fav Icon. I could be saving that wrong. It could be Fav Icon for all I know. I've used them before, but I've always known them as FAV Icon. Okay, and that's how I remember what they are. That's another feature which takes advantage of some graphics, but also gives your site a little extra oomph. As you can see here, when the site link is actually stored on the desktop, you can have that same icon appear. All this is really just mostly about making it easier to find and navigate to your site. There's a lot of material on images out there on the net. In fact, all of the information that we've covered up to Unit G, there are numerous examples out there, either W3 schools or just sites. You can always, if you have a site that you're particularly fond of, let's go to the Maricopa site. Here's one here. Let me right click. Let me view page source for this one. Well, this has also been compressed to make it harder to read or hack. But then here's a whole bunch of code down here that you can understand. Here's a form. You've got an input, which is something we're going to cover, I think, in the next chapter. And you've got some links up here to style sheets that they're using. This is all stuff that normally is available to anybody who wants to view source. And now that you've become a person who's familiar with HTML and CSS, you can look at this and perhaps get some good ideas for your website. Well, that kind of concludes today's unit. So if you have any questions, let me know, and see you online.